So there's a pain that most people will never truly understand. And it's a kind of pain that just rewires you from the inside out. The pain that kind of teaches you to just doubt yourself, to silence yourself, to apologize for your own existence, just to survive another day. And that's what narcissistic abuse does. It doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your sense of reality and it steals your trust in yourself. It makes you question your worth and your memories, even your own sanity sometimes. And today I want to walk you through, that devastation. And I want to do it, and it's not to relive it. It's not, but to finally understand it, to name it, to dismantle it, to take your power back from it. Because today, what we're going to talk about is why the wounds you carry run so deep and why healing feels so slow and so messy and why your mind still feels like a battlefield sometimes. Most importantly, why none of that means that you're broken. But before we go any further, I just want to reframe something that you may have believed about yourself for a really long time. The reason this hurts so much, the reason that it's taken so long, it's not because you're weak, it's because you've had to be strong for too long. You've adapted to survive. You've learned to read every shift in tone. You learn to anticipate danger that exists in silence. You learn to self abandon, not because you're broken, but because your nervous system did exactly what it's designed to do. It's designed to protect you. And the fact that you're still here and you're still asking questions and you're still showing up, that's not a failure, that's courage. And it's the very proof that healing is already happening. And we're not meant to do this alone. This isn't just a talk, it's a reckoning. And back to the version of you that they tried to erase, but they couldn't. Right? And by the end of this talk, this live, I want what you'll see is what you already know, is that you already have strength, you already have courage. And the future that you're trying to build for yourself is one worth fighting for. Because if you're here right now, it's because you've been fighting in a war, and it's a war that so many people don't even see. And it's not a war with fists or shouting matches, but it's also a war that exists within your own mind. A war against, doubt and fear and quiet, just feeling that somehow that you've become invisible, even to yourself sometimes. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what happened to you. We're going to be walking through the real recovery journey after narcissistic abuse and why the scars that you can't see, they can cut the deepest. And how the mind, gets rewired for survival, why healing feels messy and impossible sometimes, and how you can finally take your power back. But most of all, you're going to learn that why, we were never broken just to begin with. Like you don't have to have it all to be figured out right now. Because yeah, so many of us are just going to feel exhausted. We're going to feel confused and even overwhelmed at how hard this can be. This is not a weakness. This is proof that you survived something that most people will never understand, and you're not alone anymore. Because this kind of pain, it doesn't leave bruises. It shows up in the way that you flinch at certain words and the hesitation before you trust, in the way that your mind sometimes feels like you're living in enemy territory. Because that's the invisible battle that we're all facing. The one that narcissists trained you to fight. What do? They trained you to doubt yourself, to shrink your needs, apologizing for even existing. And the worst part, you didn't even realize it was happening. Because at first, it felt like love, felt like connection, like maybe finally you had found someone who really saw you. But over time, it shifted. And maybe you started walking on eggshells or started second guessing your own feelings until one day you woke up and thought, I don't even recognize myself anymore. Because that moment, that first crack in the illusion, that was the beginning of something the narcissist never wanted you to have, and that's your freedom. Because you may not feel free yet. You might still feel broken and confused and exhausted, But the fact that you notice, the fact that you're here right now, that means the battle isn't over. That means that you're already winning. So I want to go deeper into narcissistic abuse and how it doesn't just hurt your heart. What it does is it rewires your mind. And once you see it for what's really happening here, you start to understand why healing feels the way that it does and why so much more powerful. We are so much more powerful than we even realize. Because if narcissistic abuse only wounded the heart, then healing itself would be hard enough. But it goes even deeper than that, right? Because over time, their manipulation wasn't just something that happened around you, it started happening inside you. What we end up noticing is that their voice became your voice. And you started to question yourself with their voice. Their moods became the weather that you tried to predict. Their approval became something that you needed to feel connected. And the worst part is it didn't feel like control, because what it actually was survival. And what being in survival mode, what does that actually mean? It turns pain into hope. It turns chaos into normal. It trains your nervous system to chase after the very thing that's hurting you. And the truth is like you weren't weak. You weren't blind. What you were was human. And you were surviving in the only way that you now have, by hoping, by trying harder sometimes. But here's the thing about survival. It's not meant to be permanent. Survival mode keeps you alive in a storm, but it's not meant to be a place where you live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not. And that's why healing can feel so confusing, because even after the narcissist is gone, your mind is still fighting those old battles. Your body is still expects the next trigger to come, and your heart, it can still second guess peace because it learned that love came with pain. And that's why you wonder, why do I still think about them? And why do I still have them taking up space in my own mind? Or even looking back and wondering, was it even that bad? That's not weakness. That's your nervous system trying to heal. And just doesn't know it just right now. Because narcissistic abuse, it doesn't just hurt you, it hijacks your reality. It teaches you to believe that the pain was your fault. It teaches you to stay small, to stay apologetic, to stay doubting. And every time that you tried to break free, what happens is the trauma bond pulls you back, and it does so just whispering thoughts in your mind. Maybe this time it'll be different. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'll just try harder. But here's the truth that they don't want you to know. You were never the broken one. You were surviving a system that was designed to make you doubt yourself. And reality is like you're not crazy. You're not weak. And you're not damaged beyond compare. You were simply wired for survival. And now you're learning to rewire yourself to heal. And healing is messy. Because healing your mind after narcissistic abuse isn't about snapping your fingers. It's about gently and bravely choosing a new reality. And it ends up happening one truth at a time. So let's dig deeper. And I want to talk about, what it feels like to live with the scars that they left behind and how you're already stronger than you think. Because once the narcissist is gone, once the chaos dies down, you expect to feel free, but instead, you're standing there with a backpack full of stones that you never packed, and you don't even know where to begin. Because the weight that you carry isn't just memories, it's aftershocks of emotional warfare. It's the self-doubt that exists in those quiet moments. It's the fear that maybe you were the problem the whole time. And these aren't just passing thoughts, they're grooves that are carved in survival. They're the mind's way of protecting you even long after the danger is gone. And healing isn't pretty. It isn't quick, and it's not linear. I wish it was. Because some days you're going to feel like you can finally stand tall. And then a song or a smell or a word will just kind of drag you back into those old wounds. And you'll wonder, I thought I was past this. Why am I still hurting? Am I actually broken right now? But here's the truth that no one talks about enough. The pain doesn't mean that you're falling. It actually means that you're healing. Because every trigger that you survive, every wave of grief that you ride out, every moment that that you face your fears without running, yeah, those aren't steps backwards. They are steps through. And healing from narcissistic abuse is messy, and you're not recovering from just what they did to you. You're actually recovering what you had to become to survive that environment. You had to shrink yourself to stay small, to stay safe. You had to silence your instincts, just to get through the day sometimes. And now, you're going to start to learn how to undo it all. Because what you end up doing is you end up relearning how to trust your gut again. You're rebuilding the bridges back into your own heart. And of course, it's messy. And of course, it's exhausting. And of course, it feels like an uphill battle sometimes because you're doing sacred work. Because healing isn't about erasing those scars. It's not. It's about learning to live free despite them. Because learning to see your own strength, not just how you survive, but how you rise from all of this. The moment that you stop waiting to be rescued, that moment when it comes, it's not loud, it's not flashy. It's like when you realize that you're not waiting anymore. You're not waiting for them to apologize. You're not waiting for closure. You're not waiting for them to see your worth. This is when you stop looking back at the wreckage, right? And you start to look forward. And in that moment, you take your power back because no one is coming to rescue you. And that's going to be the best news you're ever going to hear, because you know why? Because it means you were never helpless. You were never powerless. You were just caught in a story that was never yours to carry. And for so long, maybe you thought healing meant that they had to fix everything, right? That you thought justice would set you free. You thought that closure would just be a switch you could just turn on later. It doesn't work that way. Because the truth is, it's way more complicated than that. And the trauma that we carry is far more complex. And in time, you realize that you don't need their permission to heal. You don't need their approval to move forward. And you don't need anyone else to tell you that you're enough. You know why? Because you're going to know it. And the final goodbye doesn't happen when you walk away from them. It happens when you walk back into yourself, right? Because when you stop carrying the blame that was handed to you, you stop shrinking to fit someone else's broken mirror. And when you stop asking for scraps and realize that you are the feast all along, right? Because saying goodbye isn't about bitterness, and it's not about revenge. It's about reclaiming every piece of yourself that they tried to break, and every truth that they tried to erase, and every dream that you put on a shelf just to survive that environment. And it hurts. It hurts to let go, because part of you wanted that to be real, wanted that story to have a different ending. But healing isn't about rewiring the past. It's about rewriting your future, because you are not the person that they said you were. You are not the broken pieces that they left behind. Why? Because you're the author now. You're the builder now. You're the light that they tried to stuff out and failed. Because as you step into your power, there's something that I wanted to share. Because even the strongest warriors, sometimes they just need more. And we're not meant to do this alone, because the truth is your wounds run deep. And it's because you've been, loving deeply in a place that gave you no safety. It's because you've been trying to stay human in a place that demanded that you abandon yourself. That's not a weakness. That's devotion. That's resilience. And if the healing feels slow and confusing, it's because you're not just recovering from the harm. What you're doing is you're relearning how to live without betraying yourself. And if your mind still feels like a war zone, well, it's because it was. because you were just living with that manipulation. You're living and surviving inside a reality that was constantly and being rewritten. But none of that means that you're broken. It means that you've adapted. It means that you stayed. It means that you kept showing up for yourself in quiet and invisible ways. And that takes more strength than most people will ever understand, because you're not the damage that was done to you. You are the one, you are the force that lived through it. And finding the right support, that's when when we bring the healing can truly accelerate, because it means that you were never helpless, that you were never powerless, that you were just caught in a story that was never yours to carry. And now you don't need their permission to heal. You don't need their approval to move forward. You don't need anyone else to tell you that you're enough, because deep in your soul, you know that you are. And when you stop carrying the blame that was handed to you, when you stop shrinking to fit someone else's broken mirror, when you stop asking for scraps of affection and realize that you were the feast all the whole time, because it's about reclaiming every piece of yourself that they tried to break, every truth that they tried to remove, right? And as you step into your power, this is what I want you to share. It just becomes really, really important, because so many of us stay stuck in this recovery process. We get stuck in very different places, and there are basically three places that most of us and many of us can get stuck. And those three places, I'm just going to take you through it now. Wrote them down. Make it simple. It's like there's three places, and the first is just, many of us don't even recognize that there's a problem. And so many of us, even when we're in those relationships, we realize that there may not even be a problem, because we didn't even know, because we thought what we thought. And now we know. And then once we kind of hit that place, we have to ask ourselves, is it bad enough? Right? Because so for so many of us, it's just like, it's probably not bad enough. And then that keeps us stuck, and that keeps us stuck. But in order to break free, in order to get that little motivation, that little movement, it's just like we have to just kind of lean into that and just say, no, I deserve more. I belong where I am. And then we have to make a decision, like, have I actually hit my limit? Right. And then even in the recovery process, even if you're not in that relationship anymore and your mind is still spinning and you're going through all of these self-doubt things, it's like, have you hit your limit? Are you just learning to live in a different form of survival? Or are you actually looking to thrive? Is this enough? Have you hit the bottom? And then if that's the case, then you move on to the next step, which is to take action. And action means doing something, joining a group, learning, educating. Recovery has a whole whack of programs that are just all designed to help people who are going through exactly what you've been through. Because for us to explain it to people who don't understand, it's really, really complicated. And we can get stuck in these places for a really long time. So I do hope you have enjoyed this talk, and I do hope I've explained kind of how these patterns, they were kind of adopted by us, and we're learning to recover. So I thank you for following this feed. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. Thank you for all your support and all of the things that we have. David is saying it's been 7 months. I'm trying to get something back to normal. 7 months and you can tell, because when we've been in those survival patterns for a very long time, 7 months is actually a really interesting time, because it's like there's now a 7 month gap from that old you, and the new you is still starting to sprout, but you're starting to realize what isn't yours. Right. And in that space, it's things that are starting to go. And the fight that you're talking about, David, inside your own mind, says, you can't find any refuge from the pain. It's just like, all right, well, let's go back into our bodies then. See if we can just slow down our breathing. See if we can just kind of notice our environment a little bit more. Because a lot of those things, what actually ends up happening is, because we've carried so many of those traumas and so many of the things that we wanted to say we couldn't say, they kind of still sit there. They still sit there in our subconscious. And then when we get these quiet moments, it's like we're actually safe enough for them to surface, because our internal system doesn't want to hang on to that pain. It doesn't want to hang on to that sorrow or that anger or any of those emotions. It doesn't want to. It wants to release them. So they're going to come up in those quiet moments. And that's where it's just like support becomes so important. Having somebody that can actually guide you through all those little moments that you just suppressed, that are still buried there deep in your subconscious. They can't stay there. Right? We do need to kind of work with people and get this work through. No, thank you. I'm glad you said that was a good point. Yeah, you don't have to go to that broken bond anymore. And trauma bonds are really difficult to break, because quite often it's just like we get used to those survival patterns. We kind of make a home of it. So, and that's what this channel is all about. It's all about changing beliefs. It's all about understanding what we went through, and then other people just kind of coming together and sharing their own stories, and sharing this recovery process, because it's really, really important. Right. But I would like you to invite you to reach out. There should be links in the descriptions for the different programs that I have. Working one-on-one with somebody. I have like 2 spots available left in my one-on-one program. I've got group programs. I have an immersive program. There's courses. There's programs. There's all sorts of things that'll help you get through. But as long as you recognize, like if you are stuck and you recognize that there is a problem, but there isn't bad enough, just acknowledge that that's where you are right now. And then acknowledge if you not ready to make that decision. It's just like it is bad enough, but you're just not ready to make that decision. You haven't hit your limit yet, right? Because it's just like we're learning coping strategies to live with the rumination or the ruminating thoughts or the nightmares or feeling panic. We're just learning to live with those, but those things actually need your attention even more. So it's just like I would lean into the discomfort of it all. Lean into the parts of you that you buried. Feel the feelings that you were afraid to feel in the past, and that takes support. And then you have to actually take action, right? Because we do have this tendency to survive those environments through apathy. Just it'll pass, it'll go away. But the healing process, it's just like it doesn't work that way. It's just like we can't just keep burying things and burying things, especially if we've been doing that for decades for some of us. That carpet that we've been stuffing all our problems under is just it's bigger now than the carpet itself, and it's not covering itself. So it's just like doing that emotional and healing work and connecting back into yourself. Joining a group, doing an immersion, all of these things become really, really important. And I do hope you consider looking into the Narcovery programs that I have. You can find them on www.narcovery.com. You do have to hit in www for some reason. I don't technically savvy enough to figure out why that happens. But yeah, you can book a call. There are people that you can talk to about where you are, get some understanding, get some support, and see what kind of resources that we can offer to help you. I do invite you to reach out. I do invite you to connect. I do invite you to find a community that truly sees you and understands what you've gone through, because you deserve to heal, and you don't have to do it alone anymore. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. Really appreciate your support.